In the old bus, it was warm, with quiet music playing, and the driver Nicholas was whistling a tune, glancing in the rearview mirror at the dozing passengers. His assistant, Teresa, grumbled discontentedly, "I'm so tired today. I have no strength left. My legs hurt. You talk so much during the day, argue with people, and when you come home, you don't want to talk to anyone. And when you get home, you have to do homework with your son for school, feed your husband dinner. It's all too much." Nicholas shook his head and said, "Well, I don't know. I personally like my job, honestly. I've spent my whole life on the road, on business trips. It's so interesting. You constantly meet new people, have adventures, no monotony. And Lydia and I have spent our entire lives together, experiencing so much together. We don't have children, but we have a wonderful country house and a garden. This year we had a great tomato harvest. We pickled tomatoes, made tomato paste, and treated our neighbors. Now it's time to harvest apples. We want to make homemade juice with a juicer, without preservatives, so we can treat our friends in winter." And the greenhouse Lydia built, everything according to the instructions, even with ventilation. "That's how we live, tending the garden and raising our dog. So don't complain about fate. Many people have neither family nor children. They live in loneliness. We are lucky in life. When I come home in the evening, Lydia serves me hot, hearty soup for dinner. I kiss her for that and hug her tightly. Isn't that happiness?" Teresa laughed. "You're a good man, Nicholas. Positive. You've talked about everything. Now I want to eat. Why am I complaining? I'll go wake up the drunk guy in the back seat. He needs to get off at the next stop." Nicholas always smiled when he thought about his wife, Lydia. She was the meaning of his life. A faithful friend, advisor, and beloved woman. They met in their youth at a dance. He vividly remembered their first meeting. That evening, he saw a girl with black eyes in a bright, multicolored dress, and he fell in love immediately. Lydia was always a very active girl, ready to start something new in her life. They could have fun with friends, dancing the lambada, work hard in their beloved garden, or simply spend the weekend watching favorite movies, wrapped in a warm blanket. Lydia worked as a nurse in a hospital, and it was her calling. She never treated patients' health formally. She tried to do everything possible to help them recover. Nicholas, on the other hand, couldn't imagine his life without the road and business trips. He had been driving trucks on long journeys all his life, earning a decent living. They bought an apartment, a used car, and a country house for relaxation. Lydia always waited faithfully for her husband to return from business trips, worried about him, prepared sandwiches and coffee for the road, and always greeted him with tears of joy. She never once blamed Nicholas for choosing such a profession, as he found it challenging to sleep less and drive for days without stopping. He became a bus driver. All his colleagues respected him. With extensive driving experience, he never refused to help anyone. The couple always dreamed of having children. Initially, they hoped, underwent several examinations, and the test results showed no deviations or diseases. However, Lydia never gave birth to a child. There were only a couple of miscarriages, and that was it. Nicholas saw how much she suffered from this, but tried not to show it. He always reassured her, saying he loved only her and would never leave for another woman. To have someone to care for, they got a little dog, Charlie. Lydia sewed overalls and boots for him, worked him in the park, bathed him, and he, in turn, cuddled and adored his kind owners. Nicholas's pride was, of course, their country house. They bought this small house and a huge plot of land, overgrown with grass, together with Lydia 5 years ago, and it was hard to clean it up, as everything was neglected. But now it's nice to look at their well-kept property. Instead of a small old house, there is now a cozy one with heating and a sauna, an outdoor gazebo, and a well-maintained garden. They invested so much effort to achieve this result. Life passed unnoticed, but Nicholas was content with it. The man finished his last route, handed over the shift to Teresa, and drove the bus to the parking lot. By evening, the weather had deteriorated significantly, with pouring rain and gusty winds shaking tree branches. On his way from a small town, at an intersection, he saw two figures in the headlights. It's already late, and there's no bus stop here, the man thought. He pressed the brake pedal and took a closer look. With his long driving experience, he had seen a lot and knew about bandits, so he didn't rush to get out of the car. The two, seeing that the bus had stopped, hurried towards it, waving their hands. It was an elderly man and a little child, about 7 years old. Where could they be heading on foot at this late hour? The old man and the child are definitely not bandits. I'll open the bus door, let them warm up, and find out how they ended up here. Maybe they need help. Life is full of surprises. The man opened the door, and the soaked people quickly got on the bus. Despite the child's limp, he helped his grandfather get into the bus, taking care of him. The grandfather remained silent, only waving his hands and gesturing, trying to explain something to the driver, pointing at the child. "Hello, sir. Thank you for stopping. We've been trying to leave the car on the road for an hour. My name is David, and this is my grandfather Kevin. He's mute, can't speak, and he's very unwell. He fell. We need help." And he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a piece of paper, and handed it to Nicholas. The man was a bit surprised, but unfolded the paper and began to read. "I beg you, help. Take them to the bank. It's not far from here. It's very important." The words had many mistakes, perhaps written by someone illiterate, or in a great hurry and excitement. Nicholas looked thoughtfully at them, and the boy suddenly burst into tears and spoke through sobs. "Uncle, don't drive us away. Help us get to the bank. It's very important. Please. Otherwise, Grandpa won't endure searching for the car anymore, and he'll definitely die. And I won't make it home with my lame leg." The man's heart trembled, and he decisively said, "What should I do with you? I'll help you. My name is Nicholas. The bank doesn't work at night anyway. Let's go to my place. You'll stay overnight, have dinner, and tomorrow I'll take you wherever you need to go. It's my day off anyway." Agreed. The grandfather crossed himself, raised his hands to the sky, and nodded, while the child also became happy and stopped crying. "Agreed. Thank you. You're such a kind person. But I need to stop at one place to pick up my dog. There, beyond the stop, near the town, in a box from a TV. There's a dying puppy. He's small and helpless. Someone probably kicked him out of the house. I promised to help him and take him home. He's waiting for me. I can't leave him there. He might die of hunger, or the bad boys might hurt him." Tears appeared in the wise driver's eyes. He was deeply moved by the boy's request. Well, what a small but kind and compassionate heart the child has. He's in trouble himself, but he's trying to save a dog. It's a very good deed. The man replied energetically, "Well, what can we do? I'll help you. My name is Nicholas. Show me the way. It's true that you can't leave a four-legged friend in trouble. It's good that you care about animals. I also have a dog at home. I love him, and I hope he'll be friends with your dog." When they returned to the bus stop, David hurriedly jumped off the bus, searched for a box for a while, and returned with a dirty, skinny puppy. The little dog timidly peeked out from under the boy's jacket and whimpered. David stroked him with his wet palm and whispered, "Don't be afraid, Donut. You're with me now. Everything will be fine. I didn't deceive you. I came back for you. You're my friend now. My most faithful friend." Nicholas laughed and asked, "Why did you name him Donut? He looks skinny. You can tell he's been hungry. He's skinny now, but soon I'll fatten him up, and he'll be round like a donut." David replied seriously. Throughout the journey, The grandfather dozed off, and Nicholas questioned the boy. "Why do you limp? What happened? Maybe I should take you to the hospital. Let the doctors look at your leg." The boy shook his head negatively and began to explain knowingly. "I limp because I fell off my bike a year ago. Then there was a cast on my leg for a long time. But the doctor said something didn't heal right. I don't need to go to the hospital. I have another important thing to do." When Nicholas entered the house with the guests and the puppy, Lydia was surprised but welcomed everyone warmly. "Good evening." What a surprise. Unexpectedly. "Nicholas, are these your friends? Why didn't you call and warn me that you were coming home with someone else? I would have prepared a festive dinner. Come in, undress. I'll quickly set the table." "Oh, and who do we have here peeking out from under the jacket?" "I'm David. My grandfather's name is Kevin. And this is my donut. Can we feed him something? He's hungry, and I feel sorry for him," David said. Lydia gently took the puppy out of the boy's jacket and smiled at him. Charlie hopped around and sniffed the new dog, barking cheerfully. "Let's wash him first, or he'll mess up all my carpets. David, come with me to the bathroom. You'll help him bathe," said the woman. Within half an hour, everyone enjoyed a delicious hearty soup with meat, followed by tea and sweets. Nicholas told Lydia about their meeting, and she didn't mind having these people stay overnight. The puppy had eaten his fill of dog food and was already sleeping on a rug in the warmth. Surprisingly, Charlie accepted the new dog well. He sniffed for a long time and then licked his nose, calming down. Lydia unfolded the couch for the guests in the living room, washed and hung their clothes to dry on the radiator. After all the adventures, as soon as the boy's head touched the pillow, he fell asleep, feeling safe. However, his grandfather snored and tossed for a long time, unable to sleep and deeply absorbed in his thoughts. The next morning, it was Nicholas's day off, and the family decided to go to the bank together with their new friends to make sure that David would be listened to and not turned away. After all, he was just a little boy. The bank building was located in the city center, and though not many townspeople knew about this bank, it did have clients. However, they encountered problems with the security guard at the entrance. "Let me see the manager. I have something important and personal to tell him. I can only tell him about it," David pleaded. "What are you causing here? Take a number and wait for your turn. They'll call you," the guard replied angrily. The grandfather became agitated and started waving his hands. Nicholas decided to intervene in the conversation. "I apologize, but this is a complicated matter, a complex case. As you can see, the grandfather is mute and cannot speak, but the boy can explain everything to the bank manager. Please let us see him without waiting in line." The guard waved his hand and led them directly to the bank manager, reasoning that the visitors would be directed to the specialist they needed after this conversation anyway. Let him deal with them himself. Once everyone was settled in the manager's office, a stern man with a bald head and glasses asked them displeasedly, "What brings you here? And let's make it quick. I have little free time. What urgent matter do you have?" Visitors are being brought directly to the manager immediately. David pulled a folder with documents from his backpack and handed it to the bank manager. "Here, these are all the documents my grandmother provided. Please give us her money. She kept them in this bank. My grandmother is currently in the hospital. She needs urgent surgery, so we won't leave with my grandfather until we get the money." Reluctantly, the manager took out the papers, examined them, and flipped through them for a long time. There was indeed an account number, details, the grandmother's passport, and a power of attorney allowing her husband to withdraw the deposit on her behalf. Seemingly, all the documents were correct. However, he was not eager to withdraw a large sum of dollars from circulation, as the bank earned a good interest rate on loans thanks to it. Therefore, scrutinizing the people before him, he sharply replied, "So, gentlemen, I won't give you any money right now. Bring Eleanor here. These papers are not enough. Are you bringing me some fake powers of attorney? Otherwise, I'll press the alarm button right now, and you'll be talking to the police. Goodbye. I won't detain you. You came up with a story about surgery and a mute grandfather. I know such scammers. The little boy became upset, distressed, and began to cry while shouting, I'm not lying. My grandmother is sick. She needs help. She herself told me that she saved this money for many years. Why don't you believe me? Nicholas decided to intervene as well. You must help these people. They have all the necessary documents. Why can't they withdraw the money? The manager continued to insist on his opinion and called security into his office. Take them out of my office. They're causing a scene. By the way, sir, who are you to this boy? Why are you defending him so much? Eleanor opened the account. Let her close it if it's so necessary. The conversation is over. A commotion, crying, and David's pleas filled the office. Nicholas tried to defend the boy, asked the bank manager to help their family, but he had no conscience. The security guard escorted everyone out of the bank. Kevin, the grandfather, had a heartache, and Lydia started giving him medicine. Meanwhile, Nicholas questioned the boy. David, why didn't you tell us anything about your grandmother right away? In which hospital is she? Let's go to her. Maybe we can help her ourselves. My grandmother told me to keep silent and not tell anyone about her savings, and also not to talk about her to strangers. She was worried that thieves or bandits could rob us. I don't know which hospital she's in. I didn't pay attention. What should I do now? Explained the boy through tears. Nicholas came up with something. He took paper and a pen and wrote everything for Kevin. Kevin began to write a response, providing the address of the hospital where Eleanor was. Lydia, having called a friend, found out which ward Eleanor was in. They all went to the hospital together. However, there, an elderly tired doctor suddenly informed them. Unfortunately, due to constant stress, Eleanor's heart failure has worsened, and she had a heart attack. She is currently in intensive care in critical condition. Unfortunately, due to insurance, there's a long wait for the operation, and we might not make it in time to help your grandmother. Upon hearing such news, Kevin struggled to breathe again, clutching his chest, sliding down the wall. The doctor and nurses immediately assisted him onto a stretcher. The doctor commanded, "Take him to the examination room immediately. It seems he also has heart problems. Give me the man's documents. It seems we'll have to process his admission to our department." David burst into tears and whispered, "Grandpa, hold on. Why are you leaving me alone? Where do I go now? I won't go to my mom. She'll beat me again." Lydia embraced the boy, held him close, stroked his head, and comforted him. "Don't cry, David. Don't worry. No one will abandon you. You will come with us and stay with us for a while. Your grandfather also needs treatment. You see, he has constant heart pain, and we will visit him with you in the hospital and try to help your grandmother. I'll make a call now and try to resolve the issue with the operation." Nicholas took the doctor aside and asked, "Tell me, Malcolm, how much time do we have to gather money for the operation? We don't have that kind of money right now, but we really want to help the boy and save his grandmother." The doctor did not deceive or comfort Nicholas and replied, "I don't know how her body will cope with this condition, but the situation is very severe. Plus her age. She's over 80. But we shouldn't delay with this. I don't even know how she'll handle such a complex operation, but it's worth trying. Excuse me, I have to go. Her husband is also in bad condition. We need to help him." Nicholas and Lydia were ordinary people with no savings. They started calling acquaintances and trustworthy friends. By joint efforts, they managed to collect the necessary amount for the operation. They were so happy, especially David, who hoped that his grandparents would recover soon. Unfortunately, It didn't happen. Nicholas and Lydia were only half a day late. When they rushed to the hospital and found the doctor to tell him they had the money and could schedule the operation, it was too late. Eleanor had passed away. This news was a shock to everyone, especially David. He cried heavily, burying his face in Lydia's shoulder, and shouted, "That mean man is to blame. If he had given us the money in the bank, Grandma would still be alive. I hate him." But there was more bad news to come. 3 days later, Kevin, the grandfather, also passed away, following his wife. The nurses crossed themselves, recounting what they saw at night. The patient woke everyone up at night, trying to get to the intensive care unit. Then he suddenly fell silent and scribbled on a piece of paper, "It's over. Eleanor is gone. She died." By morning, the grandfather passed away too. It seems he felt that his beloved person was no longer alive. David was deeply upset, withdrawn into his thoughts. Lydia tried to console him as best she could and asked gradually, "David, where are your parents? They need to be informed about the death of Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa Kevin. They would also want to attend their funerals, say their goodbyes. Tell me, where do you live?" But the boy became restless and nervous at the mention of his parents. "We live not far from the city. My mom drinks a lot, and then she starts fights. She used to beat Grandma and Grandpa often. She pulled me by the ear, constantly insulted me. My dad is serving time in prison. I don't want to go home. Don't give me back. I'll run away anyway. My mom is mean. She doesn't love anyone and hated Grandma and Grandpa. She took their pension money for her drinks," David explained with a trembling voice. After these words, the boy covered his face with his hands and, inconsolably crying, muttered, "Donut and I are not needed by anyone now. Only Grandma and Grandpa love me. My mom doesn't need me at all." Lydia couldn't bear to hear the boy. She felt immensely sorry for this unfortunate child who had just lost his two dearest people. She hugged him tightly and whispered, "Don't speak like that, David. We need you, Nicholas and me. We don't have our own children. We will love you and won't give you to anyone. Donut also likes it at our home. They and Charlie are now faithful friends. They even sleep together on one mat." David stared at Lydia intently, tears sparkling in his huge blue eyes. He kept asking, "Will you really not give me to anyone, Aunt Lydia? I will be good. I won't misbehave. I can even fry potatoes and mop the floor." Perplexed Lydia, realizing how many difficulties this little boy had to endure, replied, "David, children shouldn't mop the floor. They should play, study well, and enjoy life. Childhood is for that. Don't worry. Nicholas and I are here. Everything will be fine. I promise you." Lydia and Nicholas decided to independently find out more about his family. Perhaps the shock of losing his beloved grandparents made him resentful toward his mother. Maybe it's not as bad as David described it. They couldn't imagine what kind of mother would make a child hate her and not want to live with her. Nicholas reasoned that if the family was truly troubled, the sheriff would be a frequent visitor, and they needed to start by asking about this family. He immediately went to meet with him. Oswald was at the station and listened carefully to Nicholas, sighed heavily, and even crossed himself after hearing the story. "It's a pity they died. They were such decent people. Eleanor used to be a teacher, but she hadn't worked at the school for a long time, receiving benefits. She taught us all math, me and my children. Kevin was an excellent mechanic. He could fix anything. But their daughter is incomprehensible. From childhood, she had problems, fought with the kids in the yard, ran away from home, and became completely unruly at 15. Eleanor was ashamed of Laura. She tried to reason with her, but she was too kind. And Kevin was mute, so their daughter didn't listen to her parents. She left them, and when she came back, she was not alone but with a guy named Stephen, and pregnant. They got married. The parents celebrated the wedding with their money. They would have lived quietly. But Laura is not like that. She can't live peacefully, started drinking, didn't take care of David, and constantly cheated on her husband. Stephen became jealous, started drinking too, and in a drunken state, he killed one of her lovers. That's why they put him in prison, and he will be serving his sentence for a long time. Well, after that, Laura started beating David and her parents. Eleanor often complained to me, hiding the beatings under sweaters. I warned Laura several times. I often visited them, saying that their son would be taken to an orphanage. But she didn't care. Let them take him. I don't need him. He's just like his father. I didn't want to give birth at all. Let mom take care of him. I'm still young. I need to have fun. Nicholas shook his head, not understanding the kind of family David had lived in all these years. Let's go together. Inform Laura about the death of her parents. Maybe she will reconsider, start changing. Sheriff Oswald said. They approached the good but very neglected house. The windows were all dirty, and the yard was overgrown with weeds. The sheriff knocked on the window for a long time before hearing a hoarse voice. Who came? Open up, Laura. It's the sheriff. Come on, open the door quickly. Probably, you drank again with your friends yesterday. Where is your son? Or do you not care at all? Oswald shouted sternly. At the doorstep, a stout woman with swollen face appeared, reeking of alcohol. The smell was so overpowering that Nicholas took a step back. Laura looked at them with a not-so-sober gaze and reluctantly replied, "What do you want from me? We had a little drink yesterday. It was a friend's birthday." "What? Is that forbidden?" "And David went somewhere with Grandpa." "What happened?" Oswald sharply responded. "Laura, while you are constantly drinking here, your parents died in the hospital, and your son became an orphan with a living mother. Take care of yourself and think it over." The woman hiccuped and replied angrily, "I don't have money to bury them. Let insurance cover all the expenses. And I'll take David with me. I'll get support for him. I won't receive anything for the parents now. I need to figure out how to live, and I have no job. So, where is my irresponsible son? As soon as I see him, he'll get it from me right away." Nicholas looked at the sheriff, who understood him without words. "So, he intimidated Laura. You won't take David. He's in the shelter. Until you change, you won't see your son. You didn't raise him before, shifted all the responsibility onto the old mom and the sick dad, and now you won't take care of him for sure." The woman suddenly shouted, "Is that so? Well, get out then and bury the old folks yourselves. They've ruined my whole life with their preaching. And I'll still take David from the shelter." Nicholas was horrified, quickly talking to Oswald. "Is this really his mother? She doesn't even resemble a woman. Listen, David is afraid of her and hates her. He begs us not to leave him and not to give him to his mom. We're not rich people, but we're honest. We love the boy as our own. How can we adopt him? Can you imagine what will happen to him if Laura takes him back? What kind of person will David become? A criminal? An alcoholic? What can she teach him? We will organize the funeral for Eleanor and Kevin ourselves if their own daughter can't take care of it." The sheriff sighed heavily and replied, "You're right about everything. The boy shouldn't return to that mother. I'll try to help you with the adoption. I'll gather statements from all the locals, and you, too, gather the necessary adoption documents. Then we'll deprive Laura of her maternal rights. She doesn't need her son. She plans to live off support, or rather, to drink. I'll also try to help with the funerals. We need to bury the old folks in their hometown. They lived here their whole lives. I'll organize a service in the church, and we'll have a memorial at their home. Do everything as it should be. Thank you, Nicholas, for caring so much about them, and David too. It's amazing. You're complete strangers to them, and such kindness is rare these days." Nicholas hesitated and replied quietly, Lydia and I don't have our own children, and Grandpa Kevin entrusted us with the upbringing of his son. I believe there are no chance encounters. David is a wonderful boy. He's mature and clever beyond his years. He has grown so fond of my Lydia, and she promised not to abandon him and to bury Grandma and Grandpa. We can't deceive the boy. You understand? I understand, Oswald replied softly. The sheriff indeed assisted Nicholas, and they buried the old couple with all honors. Half the town attended the memorial. As people were dispersing from the cemetery, the intoxicated Laura staggered onto the scene. She could barely stand on her feet, crying and waving her arms, but the locals looked at her with disapproval. When David saw his mother, he immediately hid behind Lydia, refusing to even look at her. He felt ashamed. She was drunk, unkempt, and a complete stranger to him. Laura noticed her son and stumbled towards him, arms outstretched, shouting, "David, son, you are not in the shelter, after all. Come to Mom, I've missed you so much." However, the boy stubbornly shook his head and replied, "No, I don't want to. You're bad. You don't love me. I'll live with Aunt Lydia. She's kind and will never abandon me. And Uncle Nicholas is good too." These words enraged Laura. She attacked Lydia, shouting, "You, go home quickly, son. You're just like your crazy father, stubborn. And who are you? Look, a high-minded woman has appeared. Why does my son need you? Are you also counting on support for him? Give me David, or I'll pull your hair out right now." She actually grabbed Lydia's hair. Fortunately, Nicholas and the locals rushed in, pulling Laura away. The sheriff led her away from the cemetery, saying, "Leave already. Don't disgrace yourself. Aren't you ashamed of your behavior? You have no money for the funeral, but you have it for alcohol. Shameless. Laura, your parents did so much in their lives, and you're dishonoring them." The drunk woman yelled curses, trying to break free from the sheriff's grip. She wanted more to drink, considering herself a victim, but no one present sympathized with her. The concepts of decency, love, and attachment had long disappeared from her mind. She always felt her parents didn't allow her to live her life the way she wanted, interfered with her staying out all night, always tried to advise her, so their death even pleased her. She didn't want a child, got pregnant accidentally, and didn't know if David was from Vitya or another man. The child bothered her too, always getting in her way, demanding attention and affection. But now, realizing that they could take him away, she suddenly felt offended. Who gave them the right to take her child? The money that Lydia and Nicholas had collected for Eleanor's operation was decided to be spent on David. They planned to have him examined at a clinic and correct his leg. The boy longed to be like everyone else, carefree, jumping, riding a bike, and playing football with friends. The doctor provided positive forecasts but warned that the treatment would be lengthy, extending over several months. However, David was ready to endure everything just to become healthy again. Lydia and Nicholas supported him, not letting him get upset, even when his leg hurt severely after the surgery. Donut was always by his side, as if sensing how difficult it was for his little owner to bear the pain. He affectionately licked David's hands, snuggled up on his lap, rested his head on his stomach, and barked amusingly. David simply adored his dog, hugging him tightly, teaching him commands. Donut was his most devoted and faithful friend. Moreover, the boy felt great in his new family. He finally learned and saw what it was like to live in a family without quarrels and scandals, without drinking, where no one harmed anyone. He adored Lydia, who cooked deliciously, spent a lot of time with him, and showed care. They talked a lot, read books and children's encyclopedias together. David was dressed in nice clothes, and his hair was cut. Now he didn't stand out from other modern boys. After 3 months, his leg healed. Therapeutic exercises and massages helped him in rehabilitation, and David began to work normally. Nicholas enrolled him in a swimming pool, and took him there several times a week. The child enjoyed it so much. It was impossible to get him out of the water. He could swim and dive for hours. He almost didn't remember his mother, Laura. He felt so good and peaceful in his new family, as if he was born here. The boy missed his grandparents, often remembering them and visiting their graves with his dad. Donut had long transformed from a skinny puppy into a big, beautiful, red-haired dog. But just like before, he enjoyed climbing onto his owner's lap, even though he no longer quite fit. It was so touching. David would pet him, scratch behind his ear, and whisper, "Donut, my friend. How I love you, my good boy." Lydia and Nicholas gathered all the adoption documents, and the sheriff greatly assisted them. All local residents confirmed that Laura was a bad mother, constantly drinking and abusing her son, making her unfit to be trusted with a child. Therefore, in court, Laura was deprived of parental rights, despite her claims that she missed her son dearly. However, even in court, she showed up with a strong smell of alcohol, swollen, and, of course, the jury took notice, along with witnessing a happy child holding Lydia and Nicholas' hands. The court made the right decision regarding Laura. The couple adopted David and raised him as their own son, even though they were already of advanced age, and the boy was like a grandchild to them. They felt rejuvenated, as now they had a reason to live. Lydia constantly smiled when spending time with David, being called Mom and seeking advice. The boy turned out to be very clever, excelled in school, and on weekends, the whole family went to their country house. They didn't neglect their beloved garden with the arrival of the child. On the contrary, David was accustomed to work from an early age and always wanted to help in the garden. He skillfully weeded the plot and assisted his mom in watering the greenhouse. The boy especially loved having barbecues in the yard with his dad and roasting marshmallows. It was a real joy for him. David, with a serious expression, flipped steaks, watched the fire, and then enjoyed the delicious treat. The dogs also felt comfortable in the garden, running around the yard, digging in the soil, rolling amusingly in the sand, and fetching sticks in their mouths. Time passed. David went to school, delighting his parents with his achievements. However, Laura couldn't calm down. She continued to drink and resent her son, considering him a traitor, and she hated the family that took him in. One day, as the sheriff usual came to disperse the drunken company at her house, he scolded her and inadvertently revealed, "You're an alcoholic. Laura, Lydia and Nicholas are raising your son. They buried your parents at their own expense, and not a penny was taken from Eleanor's account. And you keep drinking and don't think about anything." Laura's eyes widened, and she smiled, asking, "What account? Does Mom have money in the bank? Why don't I know anything about it? I live here in poverty, and she has savings in the bank." The sheriff waved his hand and said, "You should find a job. You're still a young, healthy woman. That way, you won't drink, and you'll have money. It's time to think and start a new life. I won't tell you anything about the savings. Let the money go to David instead." Oswald dispersed Laura's intoxicated friends, calmed down the neighbors, and left. Laura sat on the couch and pondered. She started searching through her late mother's belongings and documents for any sign of where her mom might have kept the saved money. She even sobered up, mentally planning how to spend the money. The woman was determined to get her hands on that money, imagining how carelessly she could spend it on drinking and having a good time. Then she realized that when her father left, he took everything with him, and now all the papers were in the house of David's new parents. That's when Laura's plan started taking shape in her mind. She tidied herself up and went to them. On the way, she bought a cheap toy car and began monitoring Nicholas' house. During the trial, she had memorized where her son now lived. Laura sat on a bench in the park, waiting for someone to appear. Finally, she saw a car approaching. Nicholas dropped off David and then drove away. The boy went into the house. Laura ran after him, observed which apartment he entered. Listening at the entrance, she realized it was quiet inside, meaning her son was alone. "This is my chance," Laura thought, resolutely ringing the doorbell. The naive boy didn't even ask who had come. He immediately opened the door. Seeing his biological mother, he became frightened and even stepped back. "Mom, why did you come?" he asked. Laura was very upset. She understood that her son wasn't happy to see her. Nevertheless, she restrained herself and, smiling at him, said, "Hello, son. I missed you so much. Are you alone at home?" "Yes, alone. Mom Lydia went for a walk with the dogs. She'll be back soon. And Dad Nicholas went to the gas station." "Why did you come?" David honestly replied. After these words, Laura stopped listening to her son. Pushing the boy aside, she barged into the apartment and rudely said, "Don't ask me why I came. Quickly tell me where your grandfather's documents are." The boy got scared and said, "Dad's room has those documents." "But why do you need them? Grandpa is dead. What are you planning again? Leave. Why did you come to us?" Laura looked at her son, realizing that she felt no affection for him at all, and it had always been that way since his birth. She never wanted to have a child. She just unexpectedly became pregnant. David always annoyed her. Maternal instincts never woke up in her. Now he stood before her, crying, wiping tears from his cheeks. But Laura was so infuriated that even her own son wasn't happy to see her, constantly mentioning Lydia. Laura got angry, locked her son in the bathroom, propped the door with a chair, and immediately started searching the house for documents. She was lucky. She found these papers fairly quickly. No one had hidden them. They lay in a cupboard in plain sight. Laura smirked and ran out of the house, paying no attention to the crying David. The boy pounded his fists on the door, shouting, "Open the door. Mom, let me out of the bathroom. I'm scared." "What are you doing in there? Why did you come?" "Stay in the bathroom and think about how you betrayed your mother. It's none of your business. I'm doing what I think is necessary. You're just like your father," Laura shouted as she ran away. 10 minutes later, Lydia came home with the dogs from their work. They broke free from their leashes and barked loudly, sensing the smell of a stranger. The woman didn't understand. The door was open. The corridor was trampled with shoes. And then she heard David crying, "Mom Lydia, did you come? Donut, Charlie, open the door for me. I'm in the bathroom." Lydia rushed to the bathroom and let her son out. He immediately hugged her and started crying. The woman comforted the boy and questioned him. "Son, don't cry. How scared you must have been, my little one. What happened? Did someone break in? Are we robbed? Aren't you going to scold me for opening the door? I thought Mom really missed me, so she found me. I was even surprised, but she locked me in the bathroom and searched for Grandpa's documents in Dad's room. She's mean. She doesn't love me. I'm afraid of her," David said. Lydia immediately called Nicholas. He quickly came home, and together they inspected everything. Nothing seemed to be missing except Kevin's documents. Suddenly, Nicholas said, "I understand everything." Laura found out about the money in the bank and decided to take them for herself. "I'll call the sheriff now and report to the station." "Don't worry, son. She won't appear here again." While Nicholas was calling everyone and explaining what had happened in his house, Laura managed to withdraw her late mother's deposit from the bank, and now no one could find her. That was to be expected. She went off to spend the money. This incident left a deep impression on young David, and he held resentment against his mother for the rest of his life. The young man successfully graduated from high school with a focus on mathematics and enrolled in an economics university. He received an increased scholarship, and soon his first love entered his life. David, along with his dogs, loved to run in the park early in the morning while the city was still asleep. There, he met Ashley, a sweet education university student who also jogged in the mornings. David hesitated for a long time, was shy, afraid to talk to her, and simply admired her figure and luxurious, long chestnut hair. A huge, friendly donut helped him break the ice. He chased after the young girl, wagging his tail, rubbing his nose against her leg, and she petted him, laughing. "What a good dog. What's your name? Too bad I don't have any treats for dogs. Otherwise, I would treat you," she said. "This is Donut, my loyal friend. I raised him when he was just a puppy. And this is little Charlie, my pet too. And I'm David. I live nearby." David replied, "Well, look at that. So we're neighbors. My house is parallel to yours. I'm Ashley. Nice to meet you." The girl replied with a smile, "I'd like to meet you tonight. You really impressed me. Maybe we could go to the movies or a concert. Or we can just walk in the park. Are you okay with that?" David decisively asked. The girl was delighted and replied, "I have a better suggestion. Come tonight to the party for my sister's birthday. We are gathering with a fun crowd, singing karaoke, playing board games. So at 8 o'clock in the evening, I'll be waiting for you." "Well, I don't know. It feels a bit awkward. I don't know your sister at all. Maybe she won't like me coming over." David hesitated. "Don't worry. Sharon is happy to have everyone. For her, every guest's visit is a huge celebration. You'll understand why when you come." Ashley laughed in response. David bought flowers and a gift, an expensive set of cosmetics, and went to the party. He was very nervous because he didn't know what kind of company awaited him and how he would be received. But he was ready for anything to spend time with Ashley, as he was genuinely impressed by this girl. Exactly at 8 o'clock in the evening, David knocked on the door. Ashley opened it. She was so beautiful. Her straight hair fell on her shoulders. There was minimal makeup on her face, just lip gloss and sweet, fragrant perfume. David entered the room and loudly asked, "Hello, everyone. Where's the birthday girl? I want to congratulate her." A cute girl on a wheelchair emerged from the room to greet him. She listened shyly to the congratulations, joyfully accepted the gift, then squinted and asked, "Are you Ashley's boyfriend? She's so secretive. She doesn't tell me anything. Sit at the table. I'll introduce you to everyone. Most people here are Ashley's friends, but they're all very nice. Almost no one comes to me unless it's my sister. Otherwise, I'd go crazy." The celebration went on merrily and effortlessly. David quickly made friends with everyone, played board games together, and only at the very end of the evening, when he found himself alone with Ashley in the kitchen, he quietly asked, "What happened to Sharon? Has she been sick since childhood? She's such a good girl. I feel sorry for her." "No, she's been using a wheelchair since childhood. Sharon used to do gymnastics and had success in this sport. She was even supposed to be sent to competitions. She couldn't imagine her life without this hobby. During a routine practice, she had an unsuccessful jump and suffered a spinal injury. We've been to various clinics, and all the doctors say surgery is necessary, but it's very expensive. Now our whole family is raising money for treatment. Friends are helping us. I must help her. I've been like a mother to her since childhood. I believe she will work again," Ashley explained. Exhaling, David praised the girl, saying, "You're amazing. I also had a severe limp in my childhood. My leg didn't heal properly after an injury. So, I know how awful it is to be disabled. Everyone laughs and pities you. My adoptive parents helped me a lot. I owe them a tremendous thanks. Otherwise, I would have been lame for life. So, I'll help Sharon in any way I can." From that day on, Ashley and David started dating, and their tender relationship stretched over many years. David introduced his fiancée to his parents, Lydia and Nicholas, who, upon learning about Sharon's situation, decided to contribute to fundraising. Finally, they managed to gather the necessary amount, and Sharon underwent surgery, enabling the girl to stand on her own feet. Ashley's mom, Karen, expressed gratitude to her new relatives for their help. Now, they formed a large and close-knit family, often going to Nicholas's country house to spend time together. Karen enjoyed working in the garden, planting strawberries in the greenhouse, and tending to fruit trees. In August, Lydia and Karen made aromatic jam from apples and pears and turned the abundant sour ones into juice. Time flew by unnoticed, and David graduated from university. He deliberately joined the same bank where his grandmother kept her savings, starting as a junior manager. The bank's director remained the same unpleasant man in glasses named Walter. Of course, he didn't recognize the broad-shouldered young professional as the skinny little boy to whom he had once refused money. Thus, he hired him without any suspicion. But David had his plan. Excelling at his job, he swiftly climbed the career ladder. Simultaneously, he collected evidence against the manager. Understanding his schemes, he meticulously copied documents and stored them in a black folder on his desk. A year later, he took this evidence to the police station. There, all the bank's schemes were exposed. Many employees were fired, and David, as the most successful worker, was appointed as the new leader. Walter was furious and yelled at David, "David, where did you come from? Why did I even hire you? Are you the most honest person in the world? Or do you not need money?" David stared at the manager and said, "You wouldn't recognize me, of course. Many years ago, I came to your bank with my mute grandfather, begging you to release my grandmother's deposit. There was even a scandal, and you called security. Don't you remember that situation? Well, you refused me and threw me out of the bank, even though I could have taken those funds at that time. I had all the documents with me. After a few days, my grandmother died, and my grandfather couldn't survive her death, all because of your greed." The manager turned pale and sat in his chair, recalling the incident, and began to apologize. "That's what happened. You grew up and decided to revenge me. Yes, I didn't want to withdraw the money from circulation. I admit there was a considerable sum. I never even thought that someone might die because of it. I'm sorry. Let me compensate you and return that amount. Just withdraw your statement from the police station." David laughed in his face and said, "You know what? I'm even grateful to you because your despicable act motivated me to become a banker to meet you in the future. So, I excelled in my studies. Thank you for that. I didn't decide to revenge you, but to restore justice. Greedy and selfish people like you shouldn't ruin others' lives and deceive them. Now, the police will sort everything out on their own. So, please leave my office. Goodbye. I hope to see you in court, and I won't keep silent there." The manager shifted in his chair, realizing that the guy knew all about his schemes, and tried to justify himself. "David, but later, as far as I remember, a woman came, and she received that deposit. Don't be angry with me. Please take back the statement." David clapped his hands and exclaimed, "Bravo! Now you've confessed to yet another fraud. And it's interesting how she received the money when the power of attorney was made in the name of the grandfather. My mom had no connection to that money at all. That's the answer, because you made a deal with her and took a portion of the deposit for yourself. Right, Walter? No, Walter. You'll have to answer for all your actions in front of the jury. If only you knew how I hated you all my childhood. How I dreamed of our meeting. And here it is. I'm going to change everything in this bank. There will be no more black schemes and manipulations. Everything will be honest." Walter was held accountable for fraud and sentenced to a lengthy prison term, while David became the director of the bank. The news of the new bank manager spread quickly in the city, and everyone discussed it because everyone knew about the previous director's fraudulent activities. By that time, Ashley had graduated from university and started teaching history at school. The couple decided to get married. Their wedding had many guests who congratulated the newlyweds, wishing them happiness and many children. Happy Lydia and Nicholas sat at the festive table, quietly crying with joy, watching the newlyweds dance their wedding dance. "What a wonderful son we raised, Lydia. Handsome, athletic, I'm proud of him. I'm so lucky. I was driving home from work, and I met our son on the road," Nicholas whispered to his wife. Lydia snuggled closer to her beloved and said, "That's right, Nicholas. We lived together for a long time and had stopped dreaming about our own children because we were both over 50. But then we met David. I often remember how he hugged me, how he called me Mom for the first time. I'm thinking, Nicholas, let's move to the countryside and give our son our apartment. I find joy in taking care of our garden. I want to spend more time outdoors, and it will be more convenient for them to live in the apartment. Maybe grandchildren will come faster." Nicholas embraced his faithful wife and replied, "I agree. I've long wanted to have beehives in our country house, at least a couple. I've read a lot of literature, and I really want to try it. And when else to do it if not in retirement? How lucky I am with you, Lydia. No one understood me like you." And so they did, moving to the countryside, taking Donut and the very old, blind Charlie with them. Nicholas diligently crafted beehives, questioned local beekeepers about the details of bee care, and never forgot to help Lydia. Together they took care of the garden. Lydia made organic fertilizer for plants right in the barrel from grass and water in the yard. The smell was terrible, but the benefits for the plants were immense. David and Ashley visited them on weekends, which had become a tradition for their family. One day, Lydia pinched a nerve in her back, and she felt unwell, unable to straighten up. Worried, David took her to the hospital. A long-time acquaintance of their family worked in the emergency department. While she was processing Lydia's examination, she managed to share the latest news. "The doctor will examine you now. We'll do an X-ray, and if a tomography is needed, we'll do that. But most likely, it's just a regular case of rheumatiz. Your son is panicking a lot." Lydia smiled through the pain and said, "Oh, I know. It's not the first time my back has hurt like this. But David worries so much about me. I barely mention a discomfort, and he's already rushing me to the hospital, buying medications and vitamins." "You're lucky, Lydia. I completely forgot to tell you, in our ward, in the 5th room, David's biological mother is lying there with a fracture. It's terrible. Simply awful. All dirty, swollen, looks like a homeless person. Well, at least you adopted the boy. Otherwise, he might have turned out the same," added the acquaintance. David overheard their conversation but pretended not to. However, when Lydia was taken for an X-ray, he couldn't resist and peeked into that 5th ward. He was horrified to see an old woman with swollen eyes, deep wrinkles, and sparse gray hair that looked unkempt. Her gaze was fierce and unpleasant. Staring at him, she grumbled, "What are you looking at? What do you want?" "Wrong room," replied David quickly, closing the door. He stepped into the corridor, closed his eyes, and remembered how she used to beat him in childhood, with the echoing phrase in his ears, "You're just like your father." Then, he thought of his beloved grandparents whom she mistreated. Besides disgust and aversion, he felt no other emotions towards this woman. However, when Lydia was brought back from the X-ray room, David rushed to her and asked anxiously, "How do you feel, Mom? What did the doctor say? What's on the X-ray?" Lydia reassured him, "Don't worry, son, just regular rheumatiz. It seems my back got sweaty while I was working in the garden, and then a strong wind blew, causing the back pain. The doctor prescribed ointment and injections, and now we can go home." David sat beside her, kissed the hands that once caressed him in childhood, and said tenderly, "That's excellent news. I was so worried about you, Mom. You're the closest and most beloved person to me, and Dad too. So, shall we go home? and no gardening tasks for you today." Touched by her son's kind words, Lydia cried, feeling that her back pain had somehow lessened. She whispered to him, "Thank you, David, for finding us with Dad and making us the happiest parents. We love you too. I promise I won't work in the garden today. Nicholas will handle the strawberries himself." David helped his mother get comfortable in the car, placed a pillow behind her sore back, and returned to the hospital for a moment. He handed a bundle of money to the nurse and whispered in her ear, "This is for the treatment of the patient in the 5th ward, for your mother's treatment. Give her the money yourself," said the nurse. "My mom is in the car now, and this is just for the woman in the 5th ward," David replied, frowning. He turned away and left the hospital without looking back. The nurse sighed and thought, "He's right. It's not the one who gave birth, but the one who spent sleepless nights by your side, cared for you, and loved you." Throughout the journey home, David remembered the swollen, alcohol-ravaged face of his biological mother and thought, "How lucky I am to have ended up with Lydia as my mom. Otherwise, my life would have been just like this woman's." The next day, David felt the urge to visit his grandparents at the cemetery. So he went. He placed fresh flowers by the crosses, then sat on a bench, sighed, and softly whispered, "Grandma and Grandpa, it's so unfortunate that you left us so early. I would have made you the happiest. You loved me so sincerely. Now, I'll tell you everything." And he shared about his encounter with his mother, about all the emotions he experienced, and how he loves Lydia and worries about her. After his narrative, David began to feel better. Even the sun peeked out from behind the clouds, a sign that his grandma heard him and rejoiced for her grandson.